Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for carving out the time to join me in this morning's webinar for Digital Electronic Plan Review for government. So I want to do a quick audio check and a visual check. You should be seeing my presentation slide, and hopefully the audio is coming through clear. There is a chat window in the GoToMeeting panel. Please use the chat window to let me know audio is good, visuals are good, and while you're there, let me know where you're logging in from. It's always really fun to see all the different cities that people are calling in from. Also, in this time of quarantine where there's no travel, so it'd be really nice to like visually for a moment, travel where you are at the moment. So we're gonna get started in just about 2 minutes, but just doing a quick audio check. So let me take a look at that chat window. No responses yet. So just a quick note, we haven't started. We're just doing a quick audio and visual check. If you can hear me clear and you're able to see the presentation slide on your computer, look at the chat window in the GoToMeeting box or panel, and type in audio good. Let me know if the audio and visuals are great. And also, let me know where you're logging in from. It's always really fun to see all the different cities that are represented in the webinar. Awesome. So it looks like the audio and visuals are good. Someone is calling or logging in from Monterey, California. So thank you so much for letting me know. Awesome. So if you're just jumping in to this call, just doing a quick audio check to make sure that everything is looking good. And while you're in that chat window, I'd love to know where you're logging in from. So if not for a moment, let me just travel to your destination while during this time. Awesome. So we have folks coming in from Seattle, someone coming in, logging in from Southern California. Awesome, awesome. New Jersey, great. Welcome, Orlando. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. I always love to hear where people are logging in from. So perfect. Welcome, welcome. All right, looks like there's a lot of people who've joined us this morning, so let's go ahead and get started. I know that the first question you're all thinking, is this webinar being recorded? And the answer is yes, this webinar is definitely being recorded. You will also be given a link to the recording, and this recording will also live on our website as well. So if there's something that you didn't catch in your notes today and you want to re-listen again, this webinar will be available to view all over again. All right, so my name is Lillian Magallanes, and I'm a program manager for Bluebeam. And just last week, I celebrated my 7-year anniversary working for this amazing company. And before working for the company, I was a customer and definitely converted, and was really excited to stumble upon Bluebeam Revu and really learn all the different ways that it has increased productivities on my project and also increased communication with all of my project team members. Working for the company, I've had the privilege to work alongside with our customers, you, in helping you find solutions to lean your workflow processes, as well as helping our product team hear your voice. So now I'm in a role of program manager for community development, where I get to marry tons of my passions for this AEC industry, where I help build partnerships with industry organizations, as well as being an ambassador for a Bluebeam community group. So here's just a quick glance at today's agenda and some of the learning objectives that I want you to learn today. So Bluebeam Solutions boost productivity, as I mentioned before, that it did for myself on my project, and it expands collaboration and increases accountability in the office. Revu pools all project participants into one cohesive conversation that is built around the plan set documents themselves. It helps connect project teams to reduce the rework, to increase the productivity while driving the benefits where you need them most, saving time and money. More than 1.6 million customers in more than 130 countries trust Bluebeam Solutions to work smarter. Our collaborative platform, Bluebeam Studio, has hosted over 27 billion, yes, that's billion with a B, interactions since we launched it in 2010. We are proud advocates for the industry, supporting over 30 international user groups and industry organizations. That's something that is very near and dear to me in my role in building those partnerships. We also pursuing those standards and advancing AEC technology concepts worldwide. By providing the real-time access to relevant data, we can see the standardizing process and workflows increase predictability and allow teams to quickly respond to design changes. These efficiencies deliver benefits that can be directly measured and tracked over time. Our Bluebeam Global Services team has surveyed customers at individual companies of Revu users who reported quantifiable savings in time, improved work quality, and boosted productivity that can be directly tied to the bottom line. To get started, I have a question to ask of all of you guys. I have, 2 polling questions in this entire webinar, so this is the first of the 2. I want to know, there's a polling question that's going to pop up on your window shortly, but I want to know, what are the biggest motivators driving change in your organization? Is it mandates? Is it boosting efficiencies or doing more with less? Is it increasing accuracy and accountability? Is it eliminating paper and reducing costs? Or there's no need to leverage digital collaboration? So I'm going to keep the poll open for a little bit, and we'll go ahead and close it in a couple of seconds. So I can see the results coming through. We'll wait about 10 more seconds and we'll close that. So this is interesting. All right, I see those numbers going down. Oh, actually, they seem pretty active, so I'll wait a couple more seconds to give everybody a chance to respond. All right, so let's go ahead and close that poll and let's take a look at the results. All right, so it looks like we have about 67% is boosting efficiency and doing more with less, and we have about 55%, those are the 2, about eliminating paper and reducing costs. Huh, that's interesting. For a while at the very beginning of the poll, the eliminating paper was going strong. It looks like the boosting efficiencies is definitely the number one concern or motivators for your organization for change. So that's really great to hear. So let's continue. Since adopting review for electronic plan review, the state of North Carolina has seen a 39% increase in productivity. Time and money were the biggest challenges and the reason why the state of North Carolina created a new digital plan review process. They started to realize that the plans were taking a long time to review, and that's because they were reviewing them one discipline at a time. And as you know, time and money are one of your top concerns. The town of Kearney invited the state and walked them through their entire process and how they leverage Bluebeam Revu for permit review. From there, they created a committee from various departments, from various disciplines, and made them subject matter experts. And this step was crucial in increasing adoption, not just for a group of people, but for all departments. And it took away the scariness of a new incoming process. I mean, who likes change? For me, it's a little bit hard. So this actually helped them, think about the direction that they wanted to go, how they wanted to have that electronic permit review to look like. And they also took a look at how they were going to onboard the rest of the entire staff. So the state of North Carolina took a just-in-time training approach. The methodology here is to train a user just on the tools and features they need to know to avoid training fatigue. How many of us walk into training and recall everything? If you do, then I'm envious. The majority of us, myself included, we tend to go through a cycle of emotions initially, and then we forget what we learn. So we tend to go back to our notes, and some of us, myself included, I feel like I should take better notes, or we tap our colleague, or we go to our managers. But by having this training approach, it really kind of creates a casual environment, a learning environment with a small group of people where you can start to create, a community of knowledge sharing and really start to look at, the whole process as a whole. So it created that community of knowledge, as I mentioned, and because review is so easy to learn, it helped organically increase the excitement of learning and teaching others their aha moment. So review is customizable industry-specific markup, reduce time spent reviewing and connecting on commenting on a plan set. The tool test help decrease the risk of human error by improving standardization and communication accuracy. And the markups list, which I'm going to talk about, did reduce the rework and increase the accountability and the clarity and intent. The real-time collaboration reduced response time to complete the permit reviews with other departments faster, which resulted in less printing and also tons of desk space and storage space, which allowed, by using the real-time collaboration, gave access to all the plan reviewers to review a plan set at the same time. So let's dive in and take a look at the tools that help the state of North Carolina increase their productivity by 39%. Let's start off with the customizable markup tools. These tools, they're out of the box with review. They're going to help, clarify the communication and the intent of the changes that need to be made. What's so great about these tools is they can definitely, once you customize the look and feel, it definitely can fit those specific needs you're looking for. So let's switch over to review. Now, at first, to be honest, the first time I started to dive into markups and review, didn't really give them much of a thought. You go to the tools menu up at the very top, you come down to the markups menu and you have all these tools that are pretty standard. You have your text markups, your line markups, your shape markups, and that's about it. But once I started to dive into Revu, I started to really see the value it has. So for example, I'll take the Cloud Plus markup as an example. So one thing I can say is I can left click and drag, and I can easily create a cloud markup wherever I desire to place it. So long gone are the days where I need to click around to get the perfect cloud markup. The fact that Revu allows you to left click and hold and drag is super easy to get used to. Now, because it is a Cloud Plus, it does allow me to have a callout markup right at the very top. So I'm able to dock that in there, and I can start to place my text. Now, I do love the fact that Revu does include spell checks. I can easily just, check my spelling and all the text I have in here. All right, and that's it. But if you notice at the very top, I now have a dynamic properties tools that appears. From here, this is where the power comes in of these markups. I'm able to quickly change the appearance and properties information with just changing a couple things. So let's change that line color. Let's make that green, and let's give this a sort of a green, fill. And it's a little bit too strong, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the highlight function because it makes that fill transparent. I can still see the content that is underneath. And then when I navigate over to the text box, I can go ahead and give that text box similar fill color, but then I have this negative space at the very right. Now, this is something I've like in Revu. By the way, there's a couple of things I really love in Revu that you'll hear me say over and over. But when I right click on that negative space, I get this context menu where I'm able to select the auto size text box, where it will immediately cut out that negative space for me and clean out that text box for me, fairly easy without me having to touch the control points. Now, if you want this to be a standard, anytime you place a text box, you can go to the settings and check that option on so that happens automatically. So as you can see, with just a few simple things, I was able to quickly change the appearance properties of this markup. Now let's take a look at another markup that we didn't really see when we went into the tools menu. But I have an example here of a gas line and a water line. So when you go to the markups tools, it doesn't exactly, it's not exactly in the list. But let me show you again where you can kind of go to that next level to recreate a gas line or a water line. So in this case, I'm going to navigate to the line menu. And in the purpose that you want to communicate, where utility lines of this example should be placed, we can most certainly leverage the line markup. But again, going back into the properties toolbar, I have a menu here where I can select that line type, and this is where I can go into that specific, where I can get a little bit more specific into what type of line markup this is. Now the gas line is something that's out of the box for Revu, but we don't see the water line. That's okay. If you go into the manage menu, you can create an endless possibility of what you want that line type to look like. Whether you want to specifically point out, different type of utility, have a different verbiage, if you want to have, a thicker spacing, whatever you want that to look like, you have quite a bit of possibilities here. Now, because I have the gas line as part of my options, I'm going to select that, and then you can easily see how Revu quickly updated that information for me. And then from here you can change the line color as well as the line thickness and what you want those control ends to look like. So that's where the power of the customizable tool sets really start to you really start to see in Revu. Now let's take a look at another, type of markup. So let's say I want to indicate these couple of parking spaces and have them converted into ADA parking spaces. So let's grab that call plus markup again, and I'm going to click and drag, fairly easy, and place that text call out markup in there, and just a quick message, and done. Now again, I'm going to give this a blue fill and turn on the highlight, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity percentage because it's too strong of a blue, and then from there you already know you can change the line type and the color of the callout. Now another way that I like to show how you can add that additional clarity into a markup is you can embed information in here. So by going into the right-click function, we have a tool here called Capture. Now I did this ahead of time, so I saved a sketch of an ADA parking into my local computer, and then I grabbed that, and now I've embedded this image as part of the markup. So again, this, if you were to have a standard sketch, in your city where you know that there's a specific dimensions you want folks to adhere to, and where the symbols or signage should be placed, as in this example shows you, you can have this saved on your computer and quickly access that information and embed that into your markup. So that's one way to add that additional clarity in here. Now another way to do that is, I love the ability to be able to bring images and symbols and place them directly onto your PDF file. In this case, with the capture function, I embedded it into the markup, so it doesn't clutter my PDF. But when it comes to symbols, I really like leveraging the power of Revu and converting them into markups, and then this is where you can place them directly into your PDF file, and then just quickly indicate which parking lot should be ADA. And again, just a simple, a simple rotation. You can easily rotate that parking and then just enlarge it or minimize it as needed. Now, if you really wanted to go that next level, I mean, this is still a markup, so you can still embed that image in here, just like I did before, to give that additional clarity of information. So again, this is where you need to really think through, where does it fit my need? Now let's take a look at stamps in Revu. So let's go into the tools menu, and then just below markup I have a quick list of stamp libraries in here that are out of the box Revu. I have two that I want to show you as an example that I have customized and created. So let me just navigate into some white space, and this is where you can really mimic your rubber stamps and mimic them into a digital format where you can add that specific verbiage. In here you can change the color. Again, that's leveraging the power of the markup, but they can easily be editable, and you can even brand it if you wanted to add your agency's or your city's logo. That can be easily done in Revu. Now I love the fact that for this stamp it pulls in my name, and that's pulling the name from my computer, and it's pulling in today's date, so that can be easily changed. And then once you're in the stamps library, you can always quickly go into that edit mode and then change the color, font, and then save that, and it gets saved directly into your stamp library. Now another example of a stamp that I love is using stamps that leverage JavaScripting. So for this one here, I have a dialog window where I am able to confirm the date and put in the submittal number. So let's go with 1, and then put in the permit number. So I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to pull that information I just entered into that stamp itself. Now if you're interested in having this stamp, stay tuned towards the end of this webinar where I'm going to show you where you can access the stamp in our resources location. All right, so hopefully this gave you a good idea of the power of the markups that it has. Like I mentioned before, when I first started using markups, didn't give it much thought. I just thought it was really basic. But once I started to really get in there and started to realize the level of information that I can embed in the markup, how I can change the appearance of properties, to make it very different and very customizable to how I want the look and feel, or even also how I would have it in pen and paper, how I can, I love the fact that you can easily mimic that, especially when it comes to the stamps. All right, so let's talk about the tool chest. Now the tool chest it's extremely powerful because you can save commonly used markups and reuse them over and over again. So all the markups that I was just placing, it's definitely a pain to have to go each and every time into the tools menu and having to recreate or mimic the same property settings each and every time. But in Revu, you have the tool chest panel that you can save and have, an extensive library of different types of tools that you can use. So in this example here that you see in front of me, I have tons of tool sets that I have created by department. In working with cities in the past, I've seen a sort of a different variation of how tool sets are organized. The most popular way that most cities tend to organize their tool sets is by departments. I've also seen it by specific code criteria. That's a little bit easy for them to access. For this particular city, they were more focused on just their department. So not only did they have their departmental markups, but they also had another extensive library of code markups. And what I mean about code markups is one of the great things about the tool sets is that you can go ahead and have already blank text markups saved in here. So if you're a plan reviewer, if you're a plan reviewer and you're writing the same, building code or referencing the same building code or the same notes over and over again, rather than having to retype it, which can definitely be a nuisance down the road, you can save that blank text into a tool set and then bring it in as needed. Now for this particular example, as you can see, I can see just a bunch of little smaller images of that text markup, but I love to let people know that you can have your toolset displayed not just in symbol mode, but also in detail mode. When you have it in detail mode, you can kind of see you have a column of all your markups. You can better read what is exactly in each one of those text markups. So by doing this, you're really reducing the redundancy of some work. You're reducing the risk of errors from folks who may type in a wrong word here or there. And also what's really great, it's also a time saving. So if you have the text markup, this is something I get asked over and over is, can I change it once I have it in a tool set? And the answer is yes. You don't necessarily have to change it within the tool set itself, which you can by double clicking. But once you place the markup on the PDF file itself, you can always click in that markup and then change it. So, I understand that oftentimes from one review to the other, maybe those numbers don't exactly match, or maybe there's a word or a sentence that needs to be readjusted. But in general, maybe that verbiage is sort of standard. You can absolutely make those changes right away in Revu. Now, the other great thing about the tool set is that you can help everyone stay on the same page. So by creating a library of tool sets, everybody is working with that consistent verbiage, that same language all across the board. And again, you're reducing that human error side of things. Now, a great way to share your tool sets is by putting them in a commonly, shared knowledge location, whether that's on your network drive, or maybe you're leveraging a DMS system. That would be a great place to save them. Another great way to sort of share your tool sets is here I created, this probably took me a couple minutes to create, but this was very simple, I promise. I just took a template that I had in PowerPoint. I wanted that nice, blue, in the background. And so I pushed that into a PDF. And then from here, all I did was I went into my tools menu and then came down to my file attachment. And then I selected that specific tool set, selected where I want that to be located. Now, the first time you do that, it's going to look like a paper clip. So what you want to do is just come into the properties menu and make sure you share that, change that into a file icon. And then normally what you can do is you can always tell Revu to show the file name, but my personal preference, I didn't like the file name just because I wanted sort of the naming and the format of it to have a nice flow for everybody to read. So this is another great way to be able to share, a library of tool sets with your department, with your city, with your agency, and then, give everybody access, and they can just double click on each one of these files and it will automatically load into their registered copy of Revu. So that's a great and easy way to be able to standardize the use of your tool sets. All right, so next let's talk about the markups list. Now the markups list keeps a record of every single comment or markup that's placed on your PDF file. So this really reduces the redundancy and the rework of having to not only place a markup on your plan set, but maybe not having to retype it on a Word document or putting it in an Excel document. So you don't have to do that. You just place your markup, and the markups list is keeping that record of every single comment or markup that's being placed. So let's dive into that so we can take a look. So on this first page here, I have just tons of markups that are being placed. So when I open up that markups list, you can see that I have, quite a number of columns with all that information from each one of those markups. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a tool set, and I'm just going to start to just draw some of those markups from my tool set directly into my PDF file. And you can start to see how Revu is, recording them in the markups list below. Let's go ahead and add, let's see, I have, specific opening that I have. This is a really great markup because you can already indicate sort of that clearance you want to see. So another great markup to have in your tool set. You don't have to recreate it. You can just click and drag. Perhaps maybe there is some verbiage in here that I want to add. Again, that's all being recorded in the markups list below. Once you have that information recorded, you can easily, filter through your data, whether you want to just look at just, a specific sheet, if you're looking for, specific subject line items. So let's say you want to look at all of your engineering markups, all of the markups, by traffic or transportation, you can easily filter those out. And another great thing about the markups list that we have here is that you can go ahead and set a status. So right now I went ahead and created ahead of time statuses by department. So I put building and safety, and I put planning, and I just put some basic statuses in here: approved or correct and resubmit. Again, this is something where you want to think through, do I want the status by department? Do I want it by individual? How do you want the status to look like for each one of those individual markups? And creating a status in Revu is fairly simple. You simply go into your manage status, add that status model first, and then also add the different states that you want associated with that status. And now the last thing we can do is, from here, you can then take all this information and, have it reported out. So if you go into a PDF summary, you can have that visual, summary report where it gives you that list of all of those markups that have been placed on your plan set. This is a great added for, for the permit applicant when you want to go ahead and give them a list of corrections they need to correct. This is a great, tool for them to kind of see every single item that needs to be corrected. So this is going to get processed in just a minute. So here we go. So you can easily see all of those markups in here. They all have been broken down. You can break them down by specific discipline, And here we have all of our architects markups together. Up above, we had some of our 88 markups grouped together. I can even tell Revu to separate each one of these categories by into sheets so they don't have to be on the same report. So that is the power of markups here. All right, so next let's talk about Studio Sessions. Now this is where you can review, markup, and modify and update PDFs in real time. Now Sessions is something that the state of North Carolina is using for their permit reviews. And so let's dive into that and see what that looks like. So what I like about Studio Sessions is that you can, quickly work with others in real time. You don't have to, email people or folks, that specific plan that they need to work on. For me, this was, definitely what got me into using Revu when I was a customer, working with our design build team. What I would do is I would have to print 8 sets of all of the plan sets before they went for final approval, and I would have all the design firms and consultants come in within a week period of time and place their markups and comments on all 8 of them, and then I would collect all of those markups and put them into an Excel sheet. So when I discovered the power of Studio within Bluebeam, I realized that I never had to print ever again, and also I didn't have to block the conference room for an entire week. But the best part is, as everybody was placing their markups or comments on the digital set using Bluebeam Studio, as I showed you, all of that data was automatically being recorded. So I no longer had to go back and try to decipher someone's red notes. It was very clear, and it really just reduced for me the risk of errors or just misinformation that I was re-recording. So Studio, also just helps you work on the same one source rather than having multiple copies in your inbox. Because at the end of a certain period, we're never, for me, I was never really sure who had the most updated copy. So that definitely was a lot of rework on my end. So this is where Studio is super, helpful and powerful to really keep all teams working on the same file in that real time, and you're not having different variations or copies of that file, and it keeps everyone accountable. Now, I talked about the tool set. So one thing I always like to let people know is in this particular session, I added that toolset library in this session because I don't want to run the risk of someone who doesn't have access to the toolset, because in a Studio environment, you could work with folks that are not part of your agency. You can work with folks that are outside, and they may not have access to the toolset. So you can easily just attach that toolset library. And then again, you're ensuring that everyone is consistently using those same markups, and you're not getting a list of sort of rogue markups recorded in your markups list. So you're getting this way, you're guaranteed to have a nice report at the end of that review process. The other great thing about Studio is you can have a large number of files in here. So you can see everyone, the activity that happened in the session, when they came in, when they left, when markups is in place. You can even follow someone in a Studio session with you. Currently, I don't have anyone in here with me, but you can also do a chat in here as well as sending notifications. So sending notifications is really great in Studio because they can see that notification happening right away. So there's maybe about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes time lapse. If they happen to not be in the session, the recipient will get an email letting them know that, hey, there's a notification in this Studio number. So you can do that by selecting on that markup and then just hitting that notification option in there. So that's another great way to kind of keep the communication going with all of your project team members. Now, I do want to let you know that for the state of North Carolina, the way they had Interscope program, which is what they use for their intake process. and the IT program put SharePoint on top of it. So we do have an out-of-the-box integration with SharePoint. And so from there, the state of North Carolina, they were able to access that SharePoint library and bring those documents directly into a studio session. And then when you're done with that session, you can then push them back into SharePoint as well. So the way that that looks like, if I were to go into my preferences by going into the review menu up at the very top left-hand corner, and then when you go into interface, this is where you can set those SharePoint option connections. So you can go ahead and enter your SharePoint library, put in your credentials and log in, and that will automatically connect you into your SharePoint library. So wanted to just quickly let you know how that worked for them as well. So yeah. All right. So I have another polling question to ask you. Is what is the biggest challenge your organization faces? So you're going to see that poll question pop up in just a minute. So whether that's, is your challenge communication, paper-based workflows, document version controls, or all the above. So. All right. Awesome. We'll wait a 5 more seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and close that poll and let's see the results. All right, I will have to admittedly say that I did suspect that all the above will be the winner here. But yeah, it looks like, a lot of the challenges is communication, is working in paper-based workflows, and it's, that document version control. So again, this is where Studio is such a great tool to use, to have everybody working on that one true source and eliminate the variation of copies out there. So awesome. Thank you so much for participating in that. Now, I want to talk about, some of the best practices for going digital, something I have learned, myself as a user, as well as, helping, cities, helping them implement review and looking at, how they can leverage some of the tools and maximize the efficiencies of the tools in review. So I have 4 of them for you. So for me, it starts with PDF standards. Having standards in place just really allows for, that consistency of PDF plan sets being submitted to you. I know that, standards are, might be for a while, it's a little bit of fatigue of a word like, oh, standard, another standard. But in this case, working with standards or setting up PDF standards is definitely a power that you have on your end as an agency, as a city, to say, hey, this is how we want our digital, plan set to be submitted, because not all PDFs are created equal. I've seen a variation of PDFs out there where they're image-based and they're not vector-based. So we definitely want to make sure that, when we're setting our PDF standards out there, that we're asking for good quality. We're asking for vector-based PDF. We're asking for the text to be searchable. This is, again, going to be very easy for a plan reviewer as they're, in a plan set. They may need to quickly reference the general notes or maybe take a look at the legends. There's nothing painful than having to, dig through, especially a large plan set. It's so much easier to just leverage the search capability in review and quickly get to that information fast. Clean callouts. A lot of times I see a lot of noise in the callouts where there's a lot of content under, behind it. So it's really hard to really read that information. So asking for clean callouts in your PDF standards is always a great thing. Sheet naming, this is huge. I've seen this before my life at Bluebeam and working with a higher education bond project. The sheet naming convention was always inconsistent. from the sheet itself to the callouts to the section names, there were always an inconsistency. So it was really hard to really just accurately make sure, are we looking at the right information? Are we referencing that section cut correctly? So asking for a proper sheet naming convention in your PDF standards is a great idea, as well as a consistent plotting of location, and not so much not using so much hash patterns is another sort of examples of what makes a good quality PDF. Now, there is a nonprofit organization out there called Construction Progress Coalition. They started a couple of years ago. It was a grassroots effort of industry folks who kind of looked at each other and said, there's really no standards for PDF, because they experienced that inconsistency of bad PDFs, and they wanted to make sure that there's a collective voice that is saying, hey, this is what makes a good PDF. So if you want to download their PDF guidelines, feel free to visit constructionprogress.org. I also have an additional resource that I want to share with you at the end of this webinar and how you can get access to that. So definitely, the first, tip I have there for going digital is creating PDF standards. Now, another thing I want to note here is oftentimes when I work with cities in the past is, you have your basic standards, but you don't have to stop there from what you see in the guidelines. If having proper name tags or bookmarks is something you want to have submitted in your intake process, by all means put that in your PDF standards, and because you definitely have the power to influence in how you want that to be submitted to you. The next best practice is pilot groups. This is where you can cast and gather feedback from subject matter experts represented from various departments to help you refine that permit process, to help you make any course corrections in there. What I like about the pilot group and working with them closely is, one, I get to know them really well, but two, I also see a lot of sense of ownership, and that's really huge, because anytime you're introducing anything new, if they're excited about it, that's what that tells me is that change in management, once it's introduced to the rest of the team and the departments, that's going to be a much lesser curve than having to get everybody on board at the same time. So they really act as your own mini evangelist as you're trying to set a new process in your city or your agency. So pilot group is definitely really critical in once you start to looking at how to use reviews tools to increase productivity in your plan review. The other thing is tool standardization. So I talked about this earlier, building that library of markup tools, but it doesn't stop there. There are other things within review that I don't have time in this webinar to really dig into, but there's also profiles that help you have a uniform working environment with your project team members in your department. And then having a library stamp, as well, where you can share with everyone across the board. That's really going to help increase the clarity and the intent you're trying to communicate. And lastly is naming conventions. Now, when I say naming conventions, I know I mentioned them in the PDF standard, but this is naming conventions, closely related to studio sessions. So in studio, let me just quickly jump in here. If I were to leave this session, now for the purpose of this webinar, I just have one session in here, but if I was a plan reviewer and there are, I imagine that I have more than one review going on at a time, this list is going to start to grow over time. So I highly recommend adopting, and this is something where this is a decision that you can make with your pilot group, is adopting a naming convention on all of your sessions moving forward. In this example, I decided to put the address and then followed by a made up permit number, and then identifying which submission it is. Is it submission 1, submission 2, so on. It doesn't have to be exactly this. I just sort of took an example of what I've seen in the past, but definitely I highly recommend is, naming convention is really going to help, reduce time from looking for plan sets, or looking for the right plan set. Once you're looking at the list of sessions. So I hope that those, best practices is something that I found that I've learned over time that I've sort of become sort of that fundamental that I keep going to. It's having those standards, having that pilot group, having that library of tool set that people can access, and having a consistent naming convention I found that have been really successful practices for me in the past, both as a customer and as someone helping you, our customers, use Revu to increase that productivity level. Now, I did mention a couple of times I have a couple of resources for you guys, but I want to talk about the Government Bluebeam User Group. Now, this is a great way for you to connect with other peers, provide knowledge sharing, talk about best practices, lessons learned with other like-minded individuals. These GOVBUG meetings, they take place quarterly, and they've always been virtually since the initiation of the GOVBUG group. So if you're interested in joining and being part of the GOVBUG group, we do have a meeting coming up on June 30th, and the topic about that, it will be digital signatures. Now, the reason it's digital signatures is because it's been a trending topic in the last couple of meetings, so I'm excited to really focus on this next GOVBUG meeting to talk about digital signatures. So we're going to take the first 10 minutes to really look at those technical nuts and bolts of what is digital signatures, and then hopefully have some peer sharing from other folks on how they're using digital signatures in their cities and agencies. Now, when you email us, when you're saying you're interested to join the GOVBUG group, we do have resources for you. So we do have a studio project where we have previous recordings from past GOVBUG meetings. There's some really great ones from City of Westminster, one from City of Corvallis, and then one from City of Tacoma. They talked about specifically how they work with Acela and Bluebeam. So any of you guys working with Acela and want to know more, this is a great recording to go back and visit. And we also have their slides in there as well. Now, another great resource is the reference roster. So with the permission of the GOVBUG members, we have a reference roster. So if you're interested in connecting with another city, feel free to look at that reference roster and connect with them directly. And then we also have the PDF guidelines that I specifically pulled from the Construction Progress Coalition and kept it really focused to what's important for a government agency. So email us at communities@bluebeam.com. Let us know you watched this webinar and that you're interested in being part of the GOVBUG attendee list, so we can invite you to the next meeting coming up on June 30th. And then we'll also give you instructions on how to access the studio project. Now, if you're looking for ways to make your digital transformation easier and faster, I know that this was probably not enough time, in our morning together, but you can rely on our global services team for full implementation and training assistance. They have supported municipalities all over the country in establishing best practice processes for plan review, helping them navigate the challenges of technology adoption across multiple departments, and help them shorten the timeline for permit reviews, as well as saving them money. So if you're interested in learning more of what the services they can provide, feel free to email them directly at training@bluebeam.com. And again, you can let them know that you watched this webinar. So as I mentioned, this is a 4-series webinar. So we're going to have another webinar happening next month on June 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So stay tuned to social media, to find out that exact invitation where you can register. So I'm excited to kind of take a more deeper dive on the next webinar, and then we have one in July, and then August being the 4th one. So I want to thank you so much for carving out the time for attending this webinar of a 4-part series. Hopefully you found this valuable and informative. And as you cannot already tell, I could probably spend a good amount of the day, all of the day, to really just talk about the tools in Revu and how that they have helped me as a customer really change the way that I work. So thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day, and stay safe. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.